Welcome back to another edition of Get Well Acadiana. Thank you for joining us on the show today. This is the show that's designed to do more than just be something interesting to listen to on your Saturday morning. This show is designed to change your life by changing your health for the future. I'm Dr. Kevin. I'm the Senior Vice President of the Bryant Wellness Institutes. We're Louisiana's most advanced functional medicine institute, and that means that we use the latest technologies in drug-free, surgery-free solutions for today's worst health problems. And I've got a different one for you today, folks. We're doing something on today's show that we've never done before here on Get Well Acadiana, and that is that we have a very special guest with us for the whole hour today. And our special guest is Paul Bosworth. He is an author and as well as facilitator of the AMAZE Brain Injury Support Group. He's also advisor with the Brain Injury Association of America. And Paul says he's an accidental expert on brain injuries because he has a very special story himself. Paul, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me. Good morning.
You know, I want you to start by telling the audience how you became interested in brain injuries, because you have a very special story yourself.
I assure you it was definitely by accident. First of all, thanks for having me. Brain injury affects more than we understand. And my story, in short, is I worked the corporate life. I had the glitzy city life in Washington, D.C., prepping for a $6 million call with a company. And while I was eating lunch, that lunch stuck in my throat.
Wow.
And I had the thought cross my mind, this is not good. And the rest of it played out. I got up to poke it out of my throat and never did. So it lodged and then I passed out. So that's lack of oxygen plus blunt trauma was a recipe for me to bounce myself out of a 6-figure a year job and realize that the doctors didn't really know what to do. I was treated and released that same day.
Wow.
Now, 10 years later, there is a protocol in place that they would have to watch me for 3 days.
So in other words, nobody caught that you had a brain injury.
It was a concussion. It was a mild concussion. It's kind of like having a mild case of breast cancer. It's like, do you have that?
Right.
And it caught me looking. Of course, I didn't have a filter, so I went from a very confined, regimented person to loose, wild, and easy. I would say just about anything that I thought. I remember going to one of my clients, USA Today, and cursing for the first half hour of the cocktail party. And they were all giddy, they were all giggling at me, but they were giggling at me.
Yeah.
And they were judging me. And I was like, okay, they've never seen this side of me. Maybe this is something I should invest in.
Mm-hmm. Well, that's one of the things I notice in my practice with brain injury is many times the person doesn't even realize that something happened to them. You know, they think they get in a mild car accident or they have a mild slip and fall or they bump their head in some way, and they don't realize they're changing.
I've had this conversation, and I take a deep breath because I'll have them with professionals in the healthcare industry. Oh, he broke his clavicle, he shattered his knee, he busted his lip, and he conked his head. He had a hickey. But he'll be okay. Well, he might. I mean, everybody's different. Every brain's different. But check him in a month or 3 and see how he's speaking. See how many times he has to take a nap just to get through the day.
Yeah, you know, traditional healthcare is let's fix the knee, let's fix the arm, let's patch up the body, and everything else is going to be kind of take care of itself.
Right, and that's what it's been for the past 40 years. But we're rewriting the book on brain injury, on concussion. The NFL is playing with words these days. They were, as you well know, brought out on a $750 million lawsuit because the retirees were taking their lives because they looked fine, but they weren't. The McMahon Super Bowl shuffle guy, I don't remember his first name because I have a memory issue. I conked my head. I'm good with that. And
Jim McMahon? Jim McMahon?
Jim McMahon. Yeah. He had to have his girlfriend write down everything and tell him, okay, this is coming next. This is coming next.
Yeah.
Webster, the center from the Pittsburgh Steelers, he was in the movie Concussion. He was gluing his teeth back into his mouth because he couldn't stand to be around people in his in his retirement. That CTE and PTSD was consuming him.
Yeah, and I think there's a lot of cases that are maybe not that severe that there's
Correct.
a lot of the public out there suffering with, and that's one of the reasons that I wanted to bring you in today is because there's so many of our listeners out there that maybe they had a TIA, which for those of you that it's like a mini stroke, that's a transient ischemic attack. That's, you hear people, they don't have a stroke, but they have a quote mini stroke, or maybe they're starting to get some sort of a dementia, or even the family is kind of noticing that they're not quite as sharp as they used to be, but the person doesn't notice yet. And so I think that there's many people out there listening in our audience that has these things happening to them that are not quite that severe, but that is still a brain injury. That is still something that needs to be addressed and needs to be looked at. And, also maybe someone with this PTSD and we'll have a whole section on that later on in the show. But, there's so many of our audience and our public out there that's suffering with brain health problems. And I'm so glad to have you in to be able to call attention to this. And why don't we kind of back up a little and talk about how a brain injury happens and sort of what that even means?
For me, it was a lack of oxygen plus blunt trauma. And when that happened, I blacked out. So I didn't realize anything was going on. Thank God I woke up. And when I did so, I pulled the stuck food out of my throat. When I went to the ER hospital, I lived in the Washington, D.C. area. I lived real close to where chief justices used to go when they have a headache. And the guy said, he lectured my girlfriend for about 20 minutes. Her eyes were big as saucers. And I was like, what's wrong? Because, again, my perception from my perspective was, I conked my head. What's the big deal? But I was lecturing the nurse out in the hallway. You know what happened to me just now? God. And I was screaming it. I didn't realize I was at a higher level than I was. But it took, truth be known, it took 5 years to get an actual picture of my brain injury. And it was in a nuclear med lab in New Orleans in West Jefferson Hospital using a isotope. And I know I took a knee that day because finally a radiologist said evidence of a brain injury. 5 years it took.
Yeah, 5 years. So one of the things, the way that brain injury happens, at least the way I understand it, is it can be, number one, like you were saying, from a lack of oxygen, but also from a rapid deceleration, meaning that your brain is soft, it's kind of like gelatin, and your skull is hard. And whenever your head comes to a rapid stop or you get some sort of a blunt force trauma to your head, what happens is the brain actually strikes the inside of the skull in many cases, and that creates damage. And so we were talking about these TIAs or these mini strokes earlier, and people many times don't see things as a brain injury that are very obvious that they are. So if you've had a TIA or a stroke and you're somewhat less functional on half of your body, that's not your body, that's your brain. That's a brain injury. If you have some sort of a dementia or a little bit of problem with memory after, a stroke or a TIA or even a hit to the head, that's a brain injury. And so they're very common, a lot more common than people think.
You can get one from a heart attack. You can get one from taking the wrong drugs. You can get one without even actually hitting your head, just shaking it around in that skull. And then the inside of the skull is like coral, as I understand it. It's sharp. So when that brain smacks against the inside of it, you're smacking against essentially razor type blades. Yeah,
our bodies were not meant to take deceleration injuries like what we're giving them today. Back in the hunter-gatherer days, we weren't going 60 miles an hour.
or 20 for that matter.
Yeah, or even 20 for that matter. And so we see a lot of these after auto accidents, and people just don't even realize that, that's what's happening. But these things are very, very common. And, I'm so glad that this is finally starting to become an issue in the public's eye and that organizations like yours that's raising awareness about these. It's just such an amazing thing that's happening in the public right now. Now, why don't we go ahead and take a quick break? But before we do, I wanted to let you guys know that Paul is having an open house on brain health, and it's going to be Monday, March the 5th, which is this Monday coming up. It's going to be 5:30 to 8:30 p.m. at the Victory Recovery and Addiction Center off of Kali Saloon. The address is 111 Liberty Avenue. They're going to have tons of experts there. Paul, talk just a second about that.
Wow. We got a Super Bowl champion coming. He's got a helmet called a smart helmet. His name is Luke Lawton. He's a local, and he is beyond excited. We've got the people that are coming are the Cajun Navy of brain injury. In other words, we've been treated and released. The doctors did their thing. The initial therapists did their thing. These are the second line.
Like what I do, exactly.
Pretty much.
Who take it from, okay, I've been released from my stroke, now what? I'm still not fully functional. How do we fix that? And we take it to that next level.
The Nerve Health Institute with Chris Cormier and Dr. Angelique Miller is coming. If I can't feel my fingers, can't feel my toes, these are the folks that are connecting all this to the brain. We've got, so many. We've got sound therapy, massage, yoga. We've invited the local juice company to come with us, the vitamin juice.
And we'll be there as Bryant Wellness.
Exactly.
So it's going to be...
speech therapy will be there from UL as well.
Awesome. So it's going to be 5:30 to 8:30, March the 5th at the Victory Recovery and Addiction Center. Come out and see us. It's going to be a fun time. I think are you going to have something to eat there too?
We've got red beans and rice being cooked by a local chef.
Excellent. It's 111 Liberty Avenue. You guys stay tuned. We'll be right back. More on brain injury. I think you guys are going to be really amazed at some of the information that we got coming out today. Stay tuned. We'll be right back. Welcome back to Get Well Acadiana with Dr. Kevin. Thank you all so much for joining us today. We have a very special guest on the show today. We have Paul Bosworth with us with the AMAZE Brain Injury Support Group, and we're talking about brain injuries on the show today. And in the first segment, we were talking about how common these things are and people don't even realize. And, one of the things that I wanted to bring out is a lot of times someone will have something happen to them, and they will have a sort of a minor brain injury, and there's really no such thing as a minor brain injury, but what I'm saying is it won't be that noticeable to the point where they don't notice it themselves, but the family notices it, or their friends notice it, and sometimes they're afraid to say anything. And I want to encourage everyone out there, if that's happening, say something. Let the person know or let someone know that something is wrong and we need to check this out, because I've seen this over and over in my practice. Someone will have maybe a mini stroke, or they'll have some sort of an accident, or they'll have a hit to the head, and the family will pull me to the side and say, he's not keeping his memory up very well.
Let me help, Doc. He's not right in the head.
Yeah.
And fact is, we live in South Louisiana, so most of us aren't anyway. Just saying. When I was called out for not being right in the head after my brain injury, I had a frown on my face because I was like, how could you say that? Like, wait a minute, he's right. I had a defined stutter. I had night sweats. I would get up in the middle of the night and find myself in my kitchen where I did pass out and conk my head. And I found out 5 years later, on average, 4 times I hit my head. I kept having a dream that I was flopping on the floor like a fish. And after a couple of those dreams, you start understanding, I'm not right in the head. But that's when I started to own my brain injury, not wait for a doc to come fix it. Mm-hmm. They'll help. You're a great help to people that will realize, okay, so maybe this stutter of mine or this little twitch of mine needs to be addressed in some way, shape, or form. Because we talked about CTE earlier. That progresses over time. It kind of settles in like the tide. I have it. I know I have it.
You have CTE.
Because the basic chemistry, as I understand it, is I conked my head, and some of those cells generated a protein. And that protein is just sitting out there, and it's latent, but it's there. And I did an oxygen therapy that helped erase a whole lot of it. It's essentially that oxygen therapy woke it back up again, woke those dormant cells, those sleepy cells back up. And now I can have a full conversation with you, and probably many of your listeners are going, I can't tell that he's had a brain injury. Well, I appreciate that now, but I had to go through a stepping pace that said, okay, so I have a stutter in any way I want to, in any setting, even church. I'm clipping corners. I'm walking into walls. Okay, let's pray about this and figure out what I'm supposed to do next. And there's a group around in the DC area that helps people understand and accept it. I'm trying to get that here in South Louisiana, because that was one of the keys to the kingdom was realizing, okay, so I have something, I look fine, but I have little issues that I have to deal with. So when I drink coffee, I would be a 2-year-old that you just gave a sucker to. Whoa, boy, I'm great. All of a sudden, it's like 10 minutes later, Paul's asleep. Why is that? It's 10:30 in the morning. Also, some of it goes along, the CTE helps us to get tired because our brain is wiring around it. There'll be some groups out there that will say, no, that can't, it does happen. I can rewire. And with that, it was very empowering for a grad student, a neuropsychologist, to tell me, Paul, if you want to do something bad enough, you will. It's a great thing called the human will. And you can go to extremes with that. Jeffrey Dahmer or, whoever is going to do something bad, you can do the same thing to do good, especially for yourself.
Yeah, the brain definitely has the ability to rebuild. And that's something that I try to tell, my patients that come in with these brain problems all the time. Like, it would make perfect sense if somebody went to the cardiologist and the cardiologist said, your heart is not very healthy, so I'm going to need you to exercise and eat better, and that's going to improve the health of your heart. That makes perfect sense to everyone. But for some reason, we don't see the brain as something that can go from unhealthy to healthy by doing things to make it healthier. And it absolutely can. The brain can be made better. And that's what your organization and my office as well really.
We're on the same page.
Yeah, we're definitely on the same page. How do we take the person who has a brain injury or an unhealthy brain, and what are the steps to take them from, well, I'm not in the hospital or under a doctor's care anymore, but I still have deficit. My arm doesn't quite work as healthy. My leg is a little droopy. My face is still a little bit off, or, whatever, my speech, whatever it might be. How do we take it from there till how healthy can I become, and how well can we get that brain to be? And, speaking of the CTE, this is something that I think that we're going to find in the future that is really more common in athletes than we ever thought. I mean, this has even been found in high school athletes. And so this is something that is going to be a really problem. Our brains are not meant to take these impacts like they are. And, some of the early symptoms of CTE are things like headaches and dizziness and disorientation, but it can go on and on to develop into things like vertigo and altered speech and dementia and lack of social graces, I guess that's what you were talking about.
I call it crabbing. I'm going to crab. I'm going to stay in my house and I'm going to text, no, I'm tired. Leave me alone. Leave me. I'm good. Y'all have fun. I can't tell you how many times I've done that.
Yeah, like isolating yourself.
Because I have to.
Yeah.
I'm so exhausted, and it's personal. Mm-hmm. It's a personal exhaustion. It's not like I can power through it and go through dinner exhausted. It's like, no, my buckets are empty. Mm-hmm. I'm done.
Yeah.
As most people would say.
Right.
And what can bring it back is water, cut sugar. If you have a Powerade, or not Powerade, sorry. It's pink drinks, purple drinks, blue drinks, water. Just water. Mm-hmm. Not anything added to it, not anything amping it up.
Yeah. Well, sure, because all those are more chemicals, and that doesn't help the brain at all. And
red dye number 7.
Yeah,
Who
yeah.
knew that? Who knew that existed?
Yeah. Yeah, our brains are already bombarded by, environmental chemicals and pesticides and preservatives. The average American eats 14 pounds of that stuff. And then when you add that up with the stress and the lack of sleep that we're under, and then the impacts and injuries that we have, the health of our brains as Americans, and especially in the Acadiana area, could be made much healthier. And so I want to encourage everybody out there that if you or your family members if you know someone that's starting to be forgetful, starting to, lose their keys often or call you by the wrong name or call the kids by the wrong name.
My favorite was going in the bedroom 4 times in an hour. Why am I in here again?
Oh, gosh, yeah.
But it wasn't just one time every once in a while. It was 60 times a week.
Yeah.
And then I thought, ooh, I need to own this.
Mm-hmm.
And it was telling on me. So I was listening to my body all of a sudden, whereas before, man, I'm gone. Let's do this. Let's go out to Henderson. Let's go out to Mamou. Let's go out. Let's do it. All of a sudden, I stopped because I had to. Mm-hmm. And I started to listen. And I'm real leery of foods with sugar in them because my brain will take that and turn it into sugar, and I will be asleep within 10 to 15 minutes. You can't. As you look at me in plain daylight, I look fine, but I'm disabled. No, I'm enabled for the next person to learn what I know, and I'm dedicated to this quote cause because it's our brains. It's my manager.
Yeah.
I realize that look at it as my manager and it manages all my body functions. The first 2 months after my brain injury, I was getting every other function checked. And when I got it checked, they said it was fine. But in the throes of the moment on Tuesday afternoon at 4 o'clock, I couldn't breathe right. Mm-hmm. But at Friday morning at 8 o'clock in the morning when I got it checked, it's like, well, you're just fine, Mr. Bosworth. Mm-hmm. That happened 7 or 8 times. And I was like, how could this be? So a lot of the telltale signs, as you mentioned a minute ago, add frustration to it.
Yeah.
Frustration leads to self-diagnosis, which leads to misdiagnosis, which leads to consulting Dr. Ron Bacardi or Dr. Jim Beam.
Self-medicating is one of the things I wanted to talk about as well. That's something that we see all the time. The patient will then become addicted, or...
We have big business backing that up. And at this Victory and Recovery and Addiction Center, we've gotten into conversations with the wonderful management over there, and that it didn't occur to them until it came out of my mouth that some of the people in here came from our group. We just don't know it.
Yeah.
To be sure.
Yeah. In other words, what you're saying is some people that are addicted actually have brain injury, and that's why they're addicted.
Correct.
Okay, yeah.
They did a study in I hope I get this right, Virginia Military University. I think that's right. It's in Richmond. And this guy went to a prison, and he polled everybody in the prison. It was 70 men or 68 men, and all of them up to, I think it was 87%, 80 some odd percent had a brain injury before the age of 5.
Wow.
Talk about not good decisions.
Yeah.
And I was, right after my brain injury 10 years ago, I made some really bad decisions. So what did I do? I gained 3 of my friends that I trusted with my life and said, now you're my frontal lobe. Uh-huh. You're going to discuss everything I do over a certain amount of money. And they didn't get tired of it.
Yeah.
They were honored to be that person because I chose them. And then once I did this oxygen therapy, and we'll get to that when we get to that, but it changed the dynamics of my decision making. Mm-hmm. It changed the amount of brain cells that I had in my head. It's like, oh wait, we have some workers for that. Ooh, let's go make some decisions. And they don't ask me, well, how'd you do that? How'd you make that decision? Because I'm still adult, but I didn't need their help after a certain point.
That's awesome.
But it's part of a brain function. It's part of what is interweaved into our daily lives. I mentioned earlier red dye number 7. I drove down to the beach and I drank this red drink and I drank it the whole time. And I got out of that Jeep oh, I was sore. I was off. I was cranky. And my friend I've known for 17 years, so I've known her before my brain injury. She said, "What are you eating?" I was like, "I don't know, Subway, whatever." And I was just frustrated. I was putting my stuff up into the place that we were going to stay in, and she picked up the bottle and said, "Red dye number 7, blue dye number 5, and all that stuff affects my kid. I can only imagine with no filter like you have, it's affecting you too." I gave it to the next door neighbor. The kids had a good time with it, and I drank water for the rest of the time, and I still drink water.
Yeah.
I have some nearby.
Yeah.
Just because the brain is, I think it's 95% water.
Yeah.
So when I'm working it through the day, I'm working that water down like a gas tank, and I just fill it back up again.
Yeah. So I really appreciate you doing the work that you're doing. And for those of you that are interested, or if you have any kind of a brain health concern at all, we're having an open house on brain health. It's going to be this Monday night, March the 5th. It's going to be 5:30 to 8:30 p.m. I wanted to invite all of you that want to see the latest and greatest and how we can recuperate from any kind of brain injury whatsoever, any kind of dementia or TIA or mini stroke, whatever happened. These are the people. We are the group of people who, from all different professions and all different technologies and techniques of how we can get you to the highest level possible. So it's going to be at the Victory Recovery and Addiction Center. It's going to be 111 Liberty Avenue in Lafayette. It's going to be March the 5th, Monday night. We're going to have food. We've got a chef there, tons of people coming out. So I wanted to invite you all to come out. It's going to be March the 5th. Stay tuned. We're going to be right back. Welcome back to Get Well Acadiana with Dr. Kevin. Thank you for joining us today. We're having a good show for you today. We've never brought a guest before on the show, and I'm certainly glad that we did. We're here with Paul Bosworth, and he's a facilitator for the AMAZE Brain Injury Support Group, and we're discussing our open house that we're going to have this Monday night on March the 5th at the Victory Recovery and Addiction Center. And what we've done is we've put together all of the experts in how to recover from an unhealthy brain, and we're all going to be in one room. We're going to have experts from several different professions, several different technologies in the room, and techniques on how to improve brain health. And so you can literally go from table to table to table to talk to us about what each one of us has to offer about ways that we can make your brain healthier. And the truth is, there's tons of things we can do. There's so many things that we can do out there to take an unhealthy brain or someone with dementia or some sort of a deficit. Half their body is, maybe has a little deficit from a stroke or a mini stroke. There's tons of things that you can do to improve that. And most people don't even realize that. They don't realize that there are things you can do to make your brain healthier, just like there's things you can do to make your heart healthier. And so, Paul, welcome back to the show. I wanted you to talk about your book a little bit.
Well, one thing I was going to add to that is one of the technologies is I can't feel my fingertips.
Uh-huh.
With me, it's buttons. It takes me forever to button up my shirt, button up my pants. It's what I carry with me from my brain injury.
Fine motor control.
And whenever I meet somebody, the first answer after I ask them the question, what do you take with you from your experience, from whatever it is that your head conk, your bad drug, whatever, your concussion, your fall, or what have you? It's I can't feel my arm anymore, but I don't want to tell anybody because I look fine. And with me, it's my fingertips, and I feel them now. But when I get into that mode of, I have to actually button my shirt. I have big buttons on my shirt. There's a reason for that.
Uh-huh.
We adapt to our environment as fast as we possibly can. And what this brain injury book is called, Surviving Brain Injury, Stories of Strength and Inspiration. It was put together by my friend from Minnesota, Amy Zellmer, Zellmer. It's available on Amazon.com, and it started out in a couple of key cities. Okay, guys, let's put these stories together because, again, every brain's different. So let's put these stories together, and when we do put them together, we'll put them in one book, and we'll do a crowdfunding, and we'll do sourcing, and we'll get things going. Well, crowdsourcing and the funding, that was easy. Mm-hmm. The realization of it went into small towns like Scott, Louisiana in the first week was quick. And then we went to Canada, so now we're North America, and then we're in Australia, now we're global. So to say this is a global issue is an understatement.
Yeah.
We had to actually do crowdfunding to get the book sent to Australia because it's a little pretty penny to get it sent there. And but what it is a story, and 3 of the stories are borderline happy, sad, but the rest of the 81 are positive stories, and you'll find your brain injury in it. Not that I'm asking you to, but if you're curious, you'll find your brain injury. Now, will the survivor do it? Probably not. The caregiver will, because the caregiver can see is watching the movie. Mm-hmm. The person that's experiencing it is in the movie.
It's harder for them.
Oh, it's next to impossible. So
that's why I want to bring so much awareness out there for the family members listening. You know, this is sort of on you.
Yeah, I was called in this past week to a speech therapist office. The first thing you're going to find is your speech. My stutter, or I'm tripping on D's and I'm dragging out L's. And I said, make sure the caregiver's there, wife, girlfriend, the caregiver. And the speech therapist said, why? To herself. She didn't ask me. Mm-hmm. But the wife was able to sit next to me. And as I'm talking, the 33-year-old man in front of me that just had a stroke 5 months ago, his mouth was wide open going, wow, how does this guy know all this stuff? Mm-hmm. And the wife is writing down notes as fast as she can. Mm-hmm. And I was like, and the speech therapist goes, oh, that's why he asked for the wife. Because she's got the game plan. Mm-hmm. And I shout out to every caregiver out there because you're not appreciated enough.
Special place in heaven.
God,
yeah.
It's and those are the people that I'm called in to ask by every level of healthcare because I can talk to it. I've been there. It's like seeing the Holy Grail. It's like, yeah, I've seen it. Let me describe it to you. I'll draw it for you. Yeah, I'll show you how to get there. Yeah. I'm not a person that's going to hold off anything.
Yeah.
But
now to talk about how common these are. So, Paul, you had told me off air you were walking in the building this morning and someone stopped you and said, "I know somebody in my family
happens all the time.
Just had a TIA and they're not remembering so well."
I can be ordering in the fast food joint and the person says, "Oh, I see you have brain injury on your shirt." My cousin, sister's brother's wife had one of those. I was like, well, how's she doing? Well, she's not living anymore. But my cousin is, and he played football, but he's fine. I was like, what's he doing now? He's disabled. He doesn't do much. Mm-hmm. It's like,
or he's in rehab.
It's like for the 15th time. It's like, wait. Let's put this together. 1 + 1 = 2. Last time I checked. But this book, going back to it, was compiled to get awareness out there and gain some insights and share it. My oxygen therapy story is in it.
Mm-hmm. So this is a group of people. This book is sort of a several people that have experienced brain injury, and it's their stories of what they went through.
Yeah, and it's anywhere from 1 page to 4 pages. I got away with having more because I know the person that put it together. Yay me! But it's for the next person.
Yeah,
it's for the next person to understand. A lot of the causes that we have out and around trail back to the brain. I'm going to say that probably again and again until I'm blue in the face. It's just everything trails back to the spinal column and the brain.
Yeah.
And that's what we're learning how, through your help, through all these other people that come to this open house, how to remedy that or feed it.
Yeah.
Feed the brain.
Right. You know, I tell patients all the time that all of your cells change and replace themselves just like you change your clothes. You have a new skin every 15 days. You have a new liver every 7 years. You have a new heart. Your cells literally shed old cells and build and make new cells. The only part of your body that does not is your brain and nervous system.
You only get one.
So we are essentially our brains and our nervous system, and everything else gets changed out just like you change your clothes every day.
My doc in D.C. jokingly said, "Paul, do you remember where you hit your head?" I said, "Yeah, I was on the kitchen floor." He said, "Kneel down, put your head back onto the kitchen floor, and just say, 'I take it back.'"
Yeah.
And that was all he could do.
Yeah.
But we dip into the opioid issue because we're given those.
Yeah.
We do have chronic pain. That pain that message is sent through our spinal column, into our fingers, into our feet, into our bellies, into our backs. And I found massage therapy and what's called craniosacral was very, very, very impactful.
Yeah, craniosacral is one of the things that I do for that exact problem. But, the brain can cause so many other things. I mean, chronic pain, like you were saying, is a big one. And, we see so many people after a brain injury or after an accident or after a slip and fall or even a TIA or a stroke who are now, on opiates. And they've been on them for too long. Yeah. And there's, at that point they're addicted.
Doc gave me my neurologist, who I'm going to see while I'm in DC for Brain Injury Awareness Day on Capitol Hill. He gave me a pill and he said, "Now, Paul, you can only take one of these a week." And I was frightened at 42 years old. I was like, "You're giving me a pill that I might not remember that I took yesterday?" Mm-hmm. And so I'd mark it on a calendar with a big red X on the wall. And people said, "What's that for?" I was like, I don't remember.
Wow.
And at that point, it was a word problem that the person had to figure out for me. And again, it's that reiteration of, okay, there's another pot I need to fill to say, okay, sometimes I don't remember stuff even if I want to. Mm-hmm. And that brings frustration. Frustration brings depression. And if you're around people like you are that have had traumatic experiences, traumatic events, by the way, you can have, it's classified as a brain injury if you're in a long-term relationship that is tumultuous. Short word is a bad relationship. Mm-hmm. If you're constantly mentally abused in a relationship, that registers as a brain injury. So you can have slurs but never hit your head. You can have forgetfulness to the point of frustration. Wow. Everybody forgets. Mm-hmm. I mean, that's a given. But when you forget 15 times a day, there's something to that really deserves to be looked at in some way, shape, or form.
And PTSD as well. That registers. That's even though the person may and blast injuries are another one.
I'll go into awesome. PTSD for a second because it's an acronym that's scary to many.
Mm-hmm. Let's talk about it.
The fact is that I had it and didn't know it, and while I was getting worked on, it came to mind that when I was in process over at the Nerve Health Institute, it came up just like it would in conversation. My arms were flailing about, and I was grabbing onto things, and what I was doing was I was trying to find, my brain was trying to find the floor again. I know this sounds crazy. It should, because we're on the cutting edge of this stuff. And basically what we did was assure that my nervous system is okay over several visits. And boy, was that a game changer.
Yeah.
But it caught me looking. I'm 10 years out. I should be fine, right? Not right.
Not right. Yeah. Yeah. So I tell you what, let's do this. Let's go ahead and cut to break real quick. And then whenever we get back, we're going to finish up with PTSD. And then I also wanted to talk about some of the amazing treatments out there that we're going to be talking about at our open house, which is going to be March the 5th. That's this Monday night, 5:30 to 8:30 p.m. at the Victory Recovery and Addiction Center. That's on Collie Saloon at 111 Liberty Avenue in Lafayette. We're going to have tons of experts there. And if you have any kind of a brain health problem, you can literally come to each one of our tables and talk to us about what's going on. And there's going to be the top experts in the field in Acadiana in one room for you to come talk to. So it's going to be quite an amazing thing. It's going to be at the Victory Recovery and Addiction Center, March 5th, 5:30 to 8:30, 111 Liberty Avenue. Stay tuned. We're going to finish it up when we get right back. Welcome back to Get Well Acadiana with Dr. Kevin. Thank you for joining us. We've had a very special guest on the show all hour long today. And, you know, Paul is the guy who goes to Washington and fights for those with brain injury and tries to help pass laws to support you getting more help and more public awareness, you know, for those that have some sort of a brain health or brain injury problem. So, you know, first of all, I just wanted to thank you for doing that, for being that guy who's willing to go put yourself out there and try to, you know, get our politicians to understand that there's a lot of people out there with brain injuries that are having other problems like addiction and getting in trouble with the law and several other things from brain injury.
You're welcome. I'm 6'2", 280 pounds worth of truth.
Yeah.
And it's really cool to have one of our congressmen realize that he lost his first wife in a traumatic brain injury event where she went through the front windshield. It was her head that told the story. He mentioned that he had some issues as well with his sight. Mm-hmm. We love him for that. We love him for his work. It's a perception that we're working with. Stroke is a brain injury as well. Mm-hmm. Even though they're separated clinically, they're a brain injury as well. It's an assault to the brain.
Yeah, of course.
But we talked about the book, and Amy Zellmer, the author of the book, also has a Facebook group called AMAZE TBI Tribe.
Okay.
And what that does is it dials people in. Maybe you don't want to come to this event. It would be great if you did, but if you're staying inside, like we said earlier, sometimes people just crab it in and pull all their resources to themselves. You can go on Facebook and learn about where you are in your path to recovery. The body's going to recover. There's 7,300 people that are a member of this group. All I ask is that you be polite and you be open to learn what these other people across the country, across the world are learning from each other. We're all in this together.
Yeah.
It's a matter of fact that neurologists are just learning what's going on between our ears. We've written this off. We used to have hospitals, big, large, huge institutions. And I joked right after my brain injury, and I told my brother, I was like, yeah, I'm ready for one of those institutions. And I wasn't kidding.
Yeah. Because
I really wasn't taking care of myself. Lo and behold, I found a doc in New Orleans. His name is Dr. Harsh, spelled Harch. And he's got a clinic, and he treats folks with brain health issues across the board. It depends on how far out you are. That does play a factor in it, but the premise is very simple. Oxygen to a wound heals the brain. Mm-hmm. It's very simple.
Yeah, that's very true. You know, oxygen and nutrition. If you give the brain the oxygen and nutrition that it's lacking, you can really do wonders. And I know you did hyperbarics, which is great. What we do at our office is a little bit different. We do oxygen with pulse electromagnetic field, which is it's all about how do we flood the tissues with oxygen. You know, there's two paths to get there, but they both achieve the same thing. And so oxygen and some very specialized nutrition for brain health are two of those things that are just very, very good for it. And that's one of the things that kind of a lot of these treatments have in common is let's get oxygen and nutrition where it goes, and let's try to stimulate those brain cells to heal and repair themselves. And, you know, you said something earlier that I wanted to just mention. You had said sometimes people with brain injuries sort of seclude themselves.
Yeah.
And if there's anybody out there listening that's you, if you just don't quite feel like that you can leave the house and come to something like this open house, I want you to know that you can always call me personally. I'm right here in the Lafayette, Acadiana area. My phone number is 837-7174. And if that's you, if you just feel like talking on the phone, I'm always here for you. You can call the 837-7174 number. You don't even have to leave the house. And we'll just see if there's something we can do to try to at least help you get to the level where you feel like leaving the house first. We'll take baby steps, and I've had to do this before, and then we can go from there. We can build our way up to where we can at least get you to where, you know,
that's
where
very valuable.
You can go from
that's
there.
Very valuable to a lot of people, what you just said, and you can find me through our Facebook page, which is AMAZE Brain Injury Group. It's on Facebook. I talk to more people today than I did 10 years ago.
Yeah.
But there is hope. You can come back out of it by just somebody understanding you, somebody getting what you're going through. You look fine, but it's overwhelming to go into a restaurant. It scares the daylights out of you to go into a loud church. Oh, dear, that's church. You can't get upset with that. Well, if we don't have a filter and we're going into a banging organ or a concert that we used to do, we used to go to all this stuff. And now I listen to concerts in my house where I have a volume dial and I can adjust it. And, boy, that concert was great. Where'd you go? My living room. And I've invited some friends over, and we did some cool stuff and had some dinner. And I love to cook. And that's another thing for folks that do stay around their house is to invite your friends and do something that you love to do. If you do something that you love to do, whether it be bird watching or needlepoint or something, I encourage you to do that because your brain's going to get happy as a result of it.
Yes, more stimulation, the better. And that's one of the things that kind of starts this downward spiral. You know, they sort of seclude themselves. They get less activity. Their brain doesn't function as much. So it starts this downward spiral.
We've got a lady at this open house with she was in 2 different symphonies, and she does music therapy. And I think she's certified. Wonderful woman named Betty. And I learned about music therapy in Washington, D.C., and I thought, yeah, that brought me out of the funk. Can't tell you how many times. I call my brain injury the funk. So when I have symptoms, the funk settles in like fog. And I have it almost every night to varying degrees, but music, in a lot of cases, the television, turn it off. That's, I want you to buy this. I want you to, okay, turn that off, turn the radio on, turn the stereo on, whatever you got, and just be. Just listen and let your brain be happy.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I sure do appreciate you coming in today, Paul. I think that we have reached hopefully tons of people today.
I hope so
and,
as well.
And, you know, the whole purpose of me doing this show is just to try to help as many people as I possibly can reach a higher level of health. And, you know, brain injury and brain health is one of those things that we need more attention put on. And so if you're interested in coming to our open house, it is going to be Monday, March the 5th. 5:30 to 8:30 at the Victory Recovery and Addiction Center at 111 Liberty Avenue. And we'll post this on our clinic Facebook page at the Bryant Wellness Institutes. And if you want to talk to me about a brain injury or any kind of brain health problem that you're having, you can always call my office at 837-7174, and I'll get on the phone directly. And we'll talk about your issues and see what I think we can do in order to help you. Paul, thanks for coming in today.
Thanks for having me. Hey, everyone, you're not alone if you're dealing with this stuff.
I want to invite all of you. The open house on brain health is going to be Monday night, 5:30 to 8:30, 111 Liberty Avenue. Thanks for joining us, guys. I hope you enjoyed the show. Don't forget to join us on our Facebook. I have at the Bryant Wellness Institutes, I have a live show on Thursdays there every Thursday at noon called Dr. Kevin Live and online. You can ask questions. They pop right up on the screen. It's very interactive. And so if you want to have a little bit of a closer connection with me, you can join us on the Facebook show at the Bryant Wellness Institutes Thursday at noon. Thank you, guys. We'll see you next week.